this is Blondeguygamer, and welcome to Black Sheep Game Reviews, and this game's a piece of shit! Negative a billion out of 10! Sorry, normally I wouldn't get this mad already and do the cliched abrupt ending gag, but this game is pretty bad. Not the worst I've played, but still pretty bad. And not only that, but it's a disgrace to a lesser known but highly regarded series, Strider. While the Strider series is best known for its arcade action side-scrollers, it actually originated as a manga in 1988 which centers around Hiryu as part of an elite cyber ninja group called the Striders. The following year, Capcom adapted Strider into an arcade game where you control Hiryu with his sweet cypher plasma sword to take on an evil Grandmaster. The game became a hit with its impressive visuals, satisfying sword slashing, and versatile platforming. As such, it was brought over to home consoles. In 1990, there was the Sega Genesis port, which is what I have and is still regarded as one of the best versions of the game, which is no surprise considering the quality of arcade ports the Genesis was known for in its early years at the time. However, Strider wasn't just on the Genesis. There's the NES version that came out before it, which is more of its own separate game as it's more Metroid-ish and kind of... Although it does follow the manga source material more closely, even though it didn't release in Japan ironically, and it gives me an excuse to throw in a bloody war joke. While the NES Strider does warrant some aspects of a black sheep in the series, there are still plenty of other ports of the arcade original, most of which were on home computer systems the same year as the arcade. These include the ZX Spectrum, Amstrad PC, Atari ST, Commodore 64, MS-DOS, and the Amiga. All these have one thing in common. They were all published by the British company US Gold, since they had the rights to convert Capcom arcade games on those systems, and developed by Tiertex. It's pretty obvious nowadays that these versions don't hold up that well due to the various limitations and cutbacks made, but they did come out before the Genesis version and were successful enough that US Gold decided to make a Strider 2 the next year for those computer systems, except for DOS. Yeah, not to plug my other review show, but they did make a sequel years before Capcom's actual Strider 2 came out. And well, it's an unofficial sequel alright, complete with Hiryu using a rifle when attacking while standing still and transforming into a robot during boss fights. What? Yeah, it's not unlike Snake's Revenge on the NES being the unofficial sequel to the very first Metal Gear, and don't worry, I'll get to that as a black sheep someday. Not content with putting the bastard sequel on nearly half a dozen computer systems, US Gold saw an opportunity to port their game on the Genesis after they saw Sega port the full arcade original on a console that could actually handle it. Only this time it would be redone to tie in with the original Genesis game. Sort of, and was released in 1992. There's even Master System and Game Gear versions of that, but we're sticking to the Genesis. And for some reason it was named as Journey from Darkness Strider Returns in North America. Not sure why the Journey from Darkness part is needed when Strider Returns would have just sufficed, or even the fact that I've actually seen Genesis cartridges and covers with Strider 2 on it. Speaking of the cover, I hope you like hilariously bad 90s jargon because the back of the case is full of it. Whoa! The evil Grandmaster and his legion of bad dudes are back for revenge. They're stationed above the earth and ready to wreak havoc and plunge the planet into darkness. But hold on, Cosmic Breath! Don't turn out those lights because this party's not over. Strider's back and he's not wearing his dancing shoes. 5 ferocious levels! Wow, reading this makes me wish I had the manual just to see how duderific the writing was in that. So just to clarify, this is a port of an already unwarranted sequel that was reworked to be a follow-up of the Genesis version that was made by the same people who did the worst versions of the original Strider and the sequel off of those. It's no wonder this is widely regarded by Strider fans as the black sheep.
Why is it that every series of video games has one of those black sheeps in it?
And when we get to how the game is actually played out, you'll quickly find out why it's shunned and desired to be forgotten. So long as I don't lose it again. This game is so stupid. The game starts off with Hiryu in a forbidden forest, as the game tells us. Oh, did I say Hiryu? I actually meant Henjo, even though it's almost the exact same character sprite. Yeah, it seems that while US Gold had the rights to make another Strider game, they didn't have the rights for the actual Hiryu character, since he's from a manga. So they just changed his clothes colors and named him Henjo in the manual, while in the game he's just referred to as Strider. This is just a laughable excuse to have it be a different Strider. It's not unlike Sonic recolors you find on DeviantArt and the like.
I'm not Sonic! I'm my original character, Blondeguygamer!
What's also sad is that Henjo uses a different kind of cipher called a sweep sword, which is pretty slow and lame. Luckily, you can change the original cipher in the options to bring at least something vaguely familiar into this mess. The moment you start playing is when you realize Henjo doesn't control all that well, as his movements and jumps are slow and stiff. I'll admit that in the first Strider, Hiryu's controls have aged a bit and some platforming can be a bit wonky, but Hinjo is slower to control and just not as fun to play as. Especially when he has the ability to pick up and throw shurikens, because ninjas, except they are completely useless. You can upgrade them to throw 3 at a time, but they barely do any damage even against the weakest of enemies, and having a ranged weapon at all is diminished by the fact the Cypher reaches across most of the screen anyway, or even the entire screen when you pick up the power-up for it. Granted, it's not a rifle like in the computer versions, but the shurikens are still pointlessly tacked on. The worst isn't even the recolored hero with the stiff controls or the shoehorn mechanics, it's the level design. This is one of the most poorly laid out games I've played. Oftentimes the levels branch out into different paths, but some lead to complete dead ends with no items, wasting your time. And you do have a time limit, so if you try and explore everywhere to find health, power-ups, or even extra lives, you can run out of time and lose in life if you keep running into these dead ends and get lost. These make all the areas not fun to play through as they are full of annoyances and bad direction on where you need to go. You also have to contend with enemies, which is to be expected, but some of them are completely random and sporadic for when and where they spawn. They can even appear in areas that can't get you. Thankfully the game is pretty short with its 5 ferocious levels, and it's not too difficult once you know where to go and what to do, but the inept design of the game will still make it a chore. The game relies way too much on precision on its climbing and platforming, which is not something you want for a character with sluggish controls. Not to mention it's all too easy to do the somersault jump and run into enemies and things you can't see coming because you can't stop that jump's momentum. There are fairly frequent checkpoints and using continue starts off with those too, but even with having up to 5 continues, they only give you 3 lives each. And since you start off with 3 hit points, it can be easy to die and lose all your lives and have to start all over. The bosses and mini-bosses you face are also annoying, but with overly simple patterns to defeat. Sure, most bosses in the first Strider could be taken care of quickly, but it was all the more satisfying to wail on with your Cypher and made you feel like a badass. Here it's not that feeling of satisfaction, particularly when the orb power-ups you collect throughout the stage gives you orbs that rotate around Hinjo during the end stage bosses and can take extra hits for him depending on how many you got. This is the only time where the orb power-ups really come to play, with the exception of also collecting single orb power-ups that work similarly to the robot pickups in the original Strider, except I was only able to find one at a time and you lose it when you get hit like with the robots. Since it's just an orb that slowly goes around you, they're not nearly as helpful as the original Strider robots were. Not to mention you can gather more than one in that and even get an awesome Robo Jaguar if you manage to keep and collect 3 of them in a row. So yeah, this power-up is another thing that's pretty lame and useless. As long as you have at least 3 orb and health bars, you can just be aggressive to most bosses and take hits until they die. Unless you want full health and orbs for more points when you clear the stage, but the score, much like this entire game, is meaningless. You don't even get extra lives from certain point values like in Strider, and other than an obligatory top scoreboard when you beat the game or game over, the points don't matter.
That's right, the points don't mean a thing, like when I say I love you when I'm drunk.
No!
You would think that since this is on an 8 megabit cartridge like the Genesis Strider that ever went into the look of the game, but that is clearly not the case. Levels are dull and muddy looking, and a lot of the sprite work is stolen, reused from the Genesis version of Strider. Even cutscene portrait sprites are used again, some from characters that aren't in this game no less. And when you see something that wasn't reused artwork, it sticks out like a sore thumb. Although it's still not as jarring as the voice acting, which is mostly just the master taunting Hinjo after each stage and game overing. Yes, this game has voice clips much like the arcade original, except that had the distinction of having different characters speak different languages, while in Returns, all the dialogue is just spoken in English, even for character portraits from the last game that didn't. The sound quality isn't bad, but the acting itself is.
I have you now.
You're going down, Master.
Strider. You will learn to serve me one day.
Soon you'll bow before me, Strider. This damn cold. Where's the damn Buckleys?
Don't die, Strider.
Who the fuck are you?
Yeah, much like the game never referring to Hinjo by his actual name and only as Strider, or a Strider, this woman is never named in the game and is apparently Hinjo's girlfriend named Lexia. Although in the computer version she was a leader of a planet called Magenta and is held ransom. But on the Genesis, she's literally just Hinjo's girlfriend and a damsel in distress in skimpy clothing, and you never see her until the end or if you get a game over. I wonder if Feminist Frequency ever brought that one up. Tasteless topical internet joke? Check! If you don't have the manual like me, you won't know that unless you look up what little plot this game has. And even if you do, the game never sets up how or why she's kidnapped. You just have the first level name and thrown into the forest when you start the game. They couldn't even have a block of text or an image showing the master taking her or something. Even the first Strider has a quick image of the Grand Master groping the earth that showcased everything you needed to know. He's evil, he wants the world, go kick his ass. Strider Returns can even do that, and you can tell they didn't really try. Just like with the music, as it's also dull and forgettable, and the sound effects are dull and muffled, and this whole game is just dull and... Okay, you know what? Since the game is only 5 levels long, let's just go over them. The first stage is the Forbidden Forest, and it's mostly climbing and jumping on branches and getting inside a base where the boss is a jetpack flamethrower guy that's actually a reused mini-boss from the first game. Then we have Castle Metropolis, which is hardly a metropolis and has a bunch of annoying timing sections with purple lightning rods that can chain react you until you die. Oh, and you face the Master here because you just do. Except you can hit these things at him to do extra damage, and you'll want to because he's in a spot you can't just wail on him, and you need to jump and attack and avoid the stupid purple lightning. Okay, we defeated him, for now. Now we just need to— oh, come on! You can still die before reaching the exit after you defeat the boss. Ugh, let's just keep going. The third stage is the Hive level, a sky level that has a bunch of badly designed moving platforms, some of which you can barely see, and a bunch of robotic bees and a giant bee boss.
A large influx of bees ought to put a stop to that. Oh, fucking Lord!
The fourth level is the Alien Depths, and gee, I wonder if this is ripping off, paying homage to a certain movie franchise. There's also pools of acid that instantly kill you, unless you have hit invincibility, with random patterns of drops you need to pass. The final stage is the Master's prison ship, and it does show a cutscene, or rather a still image of the ship that just says, "Yep, we're in space now!" How did Hinjo even get on the ship? So after a long, confusing, and poorly designed level, going through repeated bosses and fighting a reused boss from Strider that's toned way down and is much easier, we finally reached the Master himself. Again. Only this time you can't use the things to hurt him, but it's still the same fight. Alright, come on, I don't want to play this game anymore, just die already! Did the game just freeze? On the final boss? I didn't move my Genesis or anything, the music is still going and the game froze! Well, I just learned that a Sega Genesis game can be so poorly programmed that it can freeze during a final boss fight. Now I have to reset and start all over again. You know, sometimes I wonder why I even bother reviewing games. I've been at this for what, 5, 6 years, and I don't even have 2,000 subscribers yet. Why should I make these stupid videos anymore if hardly anyone watches them and they can just be content claimed anyway? Though I doubt anyone would claim content on this old garbage game, but I can't even reference a song or something as a joke without risking that. How can I ever hope to actually get something worthwhile out of this? Why do I keep playing video games and all that shit like this keeps happening? I could be doing things more productive, but no, I just sit here and ramble on about them and waste my life away. Video games are fun. Making videos about video games are fun. I like having fun. Okay, sorry for that, but the game is really that badly coded. I can confirm that the freeze happens on the fight with the Master. Both of them in fact, as it can happen with the first fight with him too. The rest of the game is just as shoddy too, as now and then time won't be added, you'll respawn with no orb power-ups even though they usually stay collected if you lose a life, the checkpoint system can start you on one that's actually further back, the game is just a mess. So after playing through the game a few times, I defeated the Master, and you would think that would be the end of the game, but we have to traverse into a pointless hallway and rescue a girl from a platform thing. Once we do, we win the game, and our badly drawn hero and Ho escape in a shuttle from the exploding prison ship. And that's it. I would say I never wanted to play this game again, but the expert difficulty option piqued my curiosity. Nothing about it is different except some enemies take more hits, and since I was too familiar with the game at that point, I was able to breeze through it and the ending is the exact same, wasting even more of my time. This game can go rotten hell. This game is a pitiful excuse of a Strider game and a pathetic attempt of a sequel. I'd be tempted to call the developers morons for how much of an inferior game they made, but it seems they at least knew this game wasn't very good. On a Strider fan site lsdmainframe.net, which is where I got a lot of my research as well, there's an interview with the sole programmer of Strider Returns, Alan Finlay. He explains how this was his first game he programmed, how they took the first game's Genesis sprites, and that he did the game in 25 and 30Hz instead of the single frame 50 and 60Hz, which explains why Hinjo's animation is slow and choppy compared to Genesis Haryu. Hell, he even said he made a cheat system with the high score names, but can't remember exactly how they work, so those will likely never be used. I actually can't get mad at him since this game was obviously quickly thrown together, so all my gripes go to whoever worked with US Gold at the time for trying to capitalize on Capcom franchises with this crap. It's no surprise that this game was left in the dust after the proper sequel from Capcom came out 7 years later.
7 years later.
I wish I had that one instead of Returns, but I kind of blew my expensive PlayStation game budget on Skull Monkeys. Because of the real Strider 2, Hiryu is widely regarded as a kick-ass character that's still being in games today thanks to the Marvel vs. Capcom games, and even a brand new downloadable title that's coming out soon. Being developed by Double Helix. Really? First Killer Instinct and now this? Well, Killer Instinct did seem to turn out okay despite only releasing half the game for Xbox One's launch, but how does Double Helix keep getting these IPs after they made the Battleship first-person shooter? However, I can guarantee this new Strider game will still be a much better game than Strider Returns ever will be. I cast thee into darkness where you belong and forever be banished by myself and other Strider fans. Right, that votes result thing. The last game for that is Fallout Brotherhood of Steel. At least I can take a break from awful games with that. It hopefully won't be as bad as the Black Sheets before it.